Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the Learn to Code series, which is Introduction to Java. I'm Sadhna, the GDSE lead, and we have Janvi, the core team member, and Rakshit, the technical team member. And we will be taking your session for today. To start off, we'll have Janvi.
Good afternoon. So first, I'd like to start by introducing you people to what Java is and something you need to know really familiar and like the plus point of Java. So first, Java was developed in the year 1991 by Sun Microsystems and then was later acquired by Oracle. So it's a very simple programming language. Java makes like the writing, compiling, debugging of various codes really easy. So it is a statically typed language. It means that when you're defining a certain type of data like a variable or a parameter, it Java wants you to do it in advance. Like suppose you want to uh, initialize a variable, so it wants you to give the data type and then initialize it. It is platform independent. So the Java compiler basically converts the source code, the program that you write, to bytecode, and then you have something called as Java virtual machine, which generates this bytecode that can be run on any platform. Suppose I'm doing it on Windows and then I could send you the code and you could run it on Mac OS. So that's like the plus point of Java. It is a object oriented programming language. That is, you can organize the objects and various data in it in the way you like, in terms of collections and all, and present it in as a part of a class. And Java is also like gives us completely flexible. It allows us to add classes, new method to the existing classes, and that's why Java even supports functions and also referred to as native methods. So now I would like to tell some applications of Java. So Java is widely used in making mobile apps, mainly Android apps, and it also Java's framework called Spring Boot is also widely used in making web applications, websites, and it's also widely used in making web servers, games, and database connections. So architecture of Java. So this is how Java executes its code. So first you write some code, and then the Java compiler make turns it in, like it forms bytecode. So bytecode is basically a low-level machine language. Once Java program has been converted into this bytecode, I could send it over to any other person, and they could run it on any other operating system. So bytecode generally have like a file extension of dot class, and I'll show you how it works. So basically here I'll write a Java program. So here I could just in start this thing called and here I could suppose print out a thing called system out. 1 minute. Now when I run this code, I'll get the output as hello world. But here the compiler has created a separate class called main class. So this is the code that the compiler runs, and the computer understands from this code that it needs to print out hello world. So basically computer cannot understand human languages like Java and C++, etc. It can just understand binary form of zeros and ones. So when we write it in such high level languages, we call it source code. But then the Java compiler may breaks it into a simpler form such that the machine can understand, and then the Java virtual machine executes the code. So this is the architecture. So this basically sums up what I've done. Java source code program. with a .java extension. That's the file name which we usually give. And then the Java compiler compiles the source code and makes another file called dot with a dot class extension, and then we pass it through the Java virtual machine, and it executes the code and gives us the basic output we need. Now I'd like to show how we get outputs in Java. So basically every line of code that we run in Java is basically in a class. So usually the class name is what we generally give the file name as. Here it is main.java, and here you can see that the class is main. So usually you give it with a capital letter in the starting. So that's how classes are, that's the rule of classes. So here this is the basic code for us to print out. So for suppose hello world. Now here, these are something that Java uses so that it makes it easy for us to execute the code. So basically public is an access modifier. It specifies from where and who can access this method. So basically making this public, it will make it globally available. So you can, Java virtual machine can even access it from the outside. It can just call the access modifier from outside, and it is also like a part of how we run the code. Now static is also a keyword which is a keyword in Java, and it is like associated with the method. So this main is the method. Basically methods are functions in Java. They are called methods because functions and classes are called as methods. And void is basically a keyword. So it generally specifies that the method does not return anything. So as the main method here, it does not return anything. We give the return type as void. But for example, you wanted to return in the integer data type or string data type, we specify that here. And then this is the main. So main, it is the name of the Java's very important method. So it is basically like an identifier. So Java virtual machine first looks for this main method, and it is also like a starting point of the Java program. So it's not a keyword, but it's just a place from where the Java code starts executing. And strings and args are basically like an array of parameters. It always need not be that. When you're passing parameters, you could change it. You will learn more about in methods. And system dot out println. This is the most important. This is the way, like a standard output stream. So this is how you get the output. Here system is basically a class in Java, and it has an object of print stream. So println is another method which helps you print whatever you're putting it within these brackets. So the internal working, I'll just show you here. So I have written the same code here. So when I run it, now I'll get a code. It'll show me hello world. That's because the compiler, the Java virtual machine it has searched for where main is. After searching for main, it will see what is there inside that method. So here it's basically says system out. So you want to output it, and the print stream is it's like a package to use to print out the thing. So here you have written hello world. So that's the thing. And now input in Java. So I will write a program after this. So input also provides, like the system class also provides, like how it has provided system.out. It also provides system.in, where you can input stream a certain parameter. So here system.in technically means that you can input from your keyboard. And scanner class, basically scanner is a class that provides that gives you the opportunity like to input words and numbers and other data. So here we generally import this from the java.util package. So the java.util has many more packages, but here we want to do like input and output. So here we are inputting the scanner class. And next, this is how we take in the input. So here I have given that string name, where I want to input a string, and we have created a variable called name. Now input is basically a variable we have created in the scanner input. So this helps you take input from the user. And next is basically you're creating you're inputting your name. So when you want to input a string, that time you take next. And when you want to input integer, it's specified here, you'll take next dot int, and this is next dot float. If you guys have any doubts, I'll take them now, or we could write one or two programs. Do you guys have any doubts?
No.
Okay, so we'll write a message. We'll print a program now. So basically, we'll print a program of suppose taking some user's Twitter username. So how would we do that? First, we'll print out a message for them that enter your first. You want to also obviously show them that you want their Twitter username. So first, you'll tell enter your Twitter username. So this is the thing. Now, when you run this, it will just run that enter your Twitter username. But obviously, the user will not be able to input it. So for inputting, you'll obviously first import java.util. So this scanner package helps us to take inputs and outputs. So now after doing this, you'll want to specify a certain input. So this input is basically like think of it like a box, and we want to put all the variables we are making into that box. And here you want to make a new scanner in this thing, and system.in. You will want to like input the thing from the keyboard. So you'll write system.in. So this basically allows you to input from your keyboard. So now you will obviously a username will be like a string, like a bunch of characters. If it's just integers, like suppose your roll number, it will be something like 200056. So that is your roll number. That's like integers. But obviously your username would be like a bunch of words and numbers. So we'll input it as a string. You guys can do it along with me, and if you're getting some errors, you could stop me in between. So now the string you're using is now the username is in string. So now you want to put everything in that input box, and the next is basically so the next is basically the method in Java where you can input everything. So here you are just inputting a string, so I can just leave it as next. And now again system.println. I can do this, and then you can just tell your Twitter username is. You can do this, and you can just do Twitter username is plus username. So this is basically gives the output, and we'll run it one. Now Twitter username. Suppose I'm entering the username of DSE, so I'll just write DSEASEB. So your Twitter username is DSEASEB. So in that way, that's how input and output works. I hope you guys understood.
Now we will go to operators in Java. So operator is basically a symbol that is used to perform operations, and there are various number of operators that's there in Java. As you can see, we have unary operator, we have arithmetic, relational, bitwise, logical, ternary, and assignment. So I will go operator wise, and we can probably just see what each operator means. So unary operator, we have postfix and prefix. So this is postfix, where the operator gets evaluated after that current after you compile it once, whereas prefix, it gets operated before itself. So I'll show you an example. So over here, I'll just take a random example. Okay, so I have A is 9, int A is 9, and int B is 10. So you know what public class main is, public static void main string args is. Janvi just explained. So I've taken int A as 9 and int B as 10. So now when you run this, what do you think would get printed first? So this is a postfix operator, okay? And this is a prefix operator. So when I run this thing, initially the value of A is 9. So what did I say? Postfix will be evaluated after you run it once. So when you run this statement, you're supposed to get the value of A as 9. Whereas this is a prefix operator. What is the value of A? The value of A is 9. So when you run this, the value of A increases by 1 before at that particular time, not after the operation is done. So what the value of A would be 10 over here. So now when you run it, you can see that I get the value of the first value of A as 9 and the second value of A as 11. Why is it 11? Because over here it's already incremented. So after this statement, your value is 9 initially, but then after the statement, it becomes 10. So over here, it becomes 11 because your value of A is 9. 10. Let's just do it with B. Can someone tell me what the value of B would be after this statement? Like you can unmute and say. So the value of B is 10 initially. What would it be over here?
10.
What would it be over here?
12.
12.
Put system.out.println B over here. What will the value of system.out.println B be? What would this value be?
11.
Yes. Okay, so I hope you understood what postfix and prefix is. That is literally what this is. So you can do the same for minus minus also. So why don't we try minus minus also over here? Now, what do you think this value would be? Initial value of B is 10, right? So if I do B minus minus, what will this value be?
10.
10.
10. What will be the value of B after B minus minus?
9.
And what will this value be?
8.
So this is basically unary operator. And now arithmetic operator, you know what it is. All of us have used this, but then I will just show it once again. I will put I'll use this. Yeah. So this is plus addition operator. So what do you think the answer for this should be? I have initialized and declared A over here. That is A is equal to 9, B is equal to 10, and int C is equal to A plus B. So this is an arithmetic operator. Plus is an arithmetic operator. And I have just printed out A plus quotes. I have given the operator that I've used. So if you want to put the value of this, you can just use the plus operator. Yeah. So it will be A plus quotes. I have put my assignment operator that I've used over here. Again, quotes plus B plus quotes equal to plus C, so that I get it like in a statement thing. So what do you think I would get over here? A plus B, which is 9 plus 10, which is 19.
38.
A plus B.
Okay, only A plus B and 19.
Yeah. And now the other operator is multiplication. So multiplication, we use a start. So over here, I would get 19. Similarly, if I do minus, I would get minus 1. I would get minus 1. And if I do division, so one thing over here is we have two operators over here, modulus and division. So division returns the quotient, whereas modulus returns the remainder. So I will do both over here and show you, and we can see what the answer looks like. So for division, of course, it is 0, and I'll probably like give some number which we'll be able to understand. So yeah, let me give 20 by 10. Again, you know what the division would be 2. Now, if I give modulus, I'll put 20 by 3. So we get 6. So this is basically the arithmetic operators. Now, relational operators, it is when you compare two things together. So if A is greater than B, then print this. If B is greater than C, then print this. Greater than or equal to is also similar. Instead, you say, okay, so now if I say if 4 is greater than 5, print something. Yeah, so I'll speak more about this relational operators and all of these operators when we come to our statements and loops. But these are the basic operators. If any one of you want to know about any of these operators, you can let me know. I will speak about that. But then we will be speaking more about these operators later on. The basic thing that you'll have to know is arithmetic operators, unary operators, relational operators, logical operators, ternary, there will be a few things here and there, and assignment operators. Now, I'll just tell you what this assignment operator is. So, you know, equal to, that is normal. So now you have learned about multiplication, division, modulus, plus, minus. Now, you might be wondering what plus equal to or minus equal to or multiplication equal to is. So instead of me putting it as a, I'll show you just a minute. So if I want to, I'll write this whole code again. So int a is equal to 5, int b is, all of you can probably do these with me. So like open the online compiler. Vinayak has put the link for the online compiler, or if you have any other compiler like VS Code or BlueJ or Eclipse, you can use that as well. So you can do this with me so that it's like a hands-on thing and we would know, you would also know how to do everything properly. So I will put this over here. Now this is basically, I'll just put it as b equal 10, or the basic example is x equal x plus y. Okay, I'm just showing you an example of what this means. So instead of us doing x equal x plus y, what I can do is x plus equal to y. So these two sentences technically mean the same. So over here, if I want to do a is equal to a plus b, instead of me doing this, I would just do a plus equal to b. So now let's see if both of these mean the same. I will put this in the print statement. And I will put the next one also in a print statement. And let's see if both of these are the same. So I might have to change the variables because I'm using the same thing over here, but I'll just change the variables. Give me a minute. Int c equal 5 and int d equal 10. So instead of a and b, I'm just taking c and d over here because it would overwrite. So I will just leave this. So do you think both of these will give me the same answer? Yes, because it is technically the same thing. So I should get both as 15. So this is basically assignment operator. So instead of putting your code big like this, you could just use x plus equal to y instead of x equal x plus y. So this is the basic gist of operators. If you have any doubts, you can let me know in the chat or unmute. We will move on to data types now. So data types are basically, it specifies the sizes and values that can be stored in a variable. And in Java, we have two types of data types, which is primitive and non-primitive. Now, primitive data types are the building blocks of data manipulation, and these are the most basic data types that is available in Java language. So over here, as you can see in this next figure, Primitive data types includes Boolean, character, integer, floating. So Boolean is basically true or false values, and the default value of Boolean is false, and it has a size of 1 bit. And character is basically char. It is for just one single character, not like a whole string or like a whole word. And the default value is /u and 4 zeros, and its default size is 2 bytes. For integer, we have 4 types, which is byte, short, int, long. The default values of byte, short, and int are 0, whereas for long, it is 0L. And in byte is of the size of byte is 1 byte, size of short is 2 bytes, int is 4 bytes, and long is 8 bytes. And in floating point, we have float and double. And the default value of float is 0.0f. Default value of double is 0.0d. The default size of float is 4 bytes and default size of double is 8 bytes. Now, when you come to non-primitive data type, you have 4 types in that, which is string, array, class, interface. We would not be going deep into this, but we would be using all of these in today's session. Now, moving on to variables. So variable is basically the name of the memory location. As you can see, it is stored in a data. Its value can be changed, and variable, it is basically a container which holds the value while the Java program is executed. So as you saw, I was doing an example over here. So int is my data type, whereas a is my variable name. Similarly, over here also, int is my data type, b is my variable name. So over here, a, b, c, d are basically my variable names. And these variable names can be changed. And it's basically a way to represent a memory location for like identifying it easily. Now, the syntax for a variable name is data type and variable name. As I showed you over here, we will first have our data type followed by our variable name. So it can either be int a or float a or char ch or anything like that. Now, when we move to types of variables, we have 3 types of variables in Java: local variable, instance variable, and static variable. So local variable is basically a variable which is declared inside the body of the method. You will learn more about this later on. You will learn about what a method and all is later. And this variable can only be used within that method, and other methods in that class, they won't even know that this variable exists. It can be used only in that particular method. And this local variable cannot be defined with the word static. Static is a keyword. And instance variable, it is a variable declared inside the class but outside the body of the method. So local variable was only inside the method and it can be used only inside the method, whereas instance variable is outside the method but in the body of the class. So it is also not declared as static, and it is called instance variable because its value is instance specific and it is not shared among other instances. Now moving on to static variable, it is a variable that is a variable which is declared static is called static variable. So it is not local and you can only have like one copy, a single copy of a static variable and share it among the whole class. So this is basically the 3 types of variable. You will learn more about method in the later on of this session. So now we will move to the statements, which is if else, if ladder. We have loops and all also later. So I have given the basic syntax of all of these. So I will just tell you what the if statement is. If statement, it basically evaluates a Boolean expression and enables the program to enter a block of code if the expression evaluates as true. So what happens is, if is a keyword. So this if condition, this is your basic syntax. So if bracket condition, open flower brackets, put in your statements, close flower brackets. So now this statement will be executed only when the condition is true. If the condition is not true, it will not even execute the statement. It will not enter this loop. It will just go to the next statement, which is outside the if statement. So we can maybe do one question. I will just show you one question related to this if thing. So what I'll do is, first I'll just give int n equal 9. So what did I do? This is a data type. This is a variable name. So this is declaring a variable and this is initializing a variable. So if I do int n, this is basically called declaring a variable. N is equal to 9 is called initializing. So this is called declaring and this is called initializing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my if thing over here. So it was if condition, then statements, right? Yeah. So if condition and if the condition satisfies, and then my statements gets executed. What I'll put is I want to check if the number that I have entered is 0. So what I'll do is if n double equal to 0. So what does double equal to do? Double equal to basically checks if the left hand side is exactly equal to that of the right hand side. So now the initial value that I gave is 9, right? So what I'll do is I'll put a print statement here. Println. I'll say it is 0. And I'll put a semicolon. Make sure you put the semicolon because without the semicolon, you're going to get an error. So what do you think the answer would be for this? Can anyone unmute?
It won't print anything.
It won't print anything. Why won't it print anything?
Like n is not equal to 0, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
value is 9.
Yes. So the basic condition, what did I say? If only this condition satisfies, then only it would enter if. If it doesn't satisfy, it wouldn't even enter if. So now if I put 0, what do you think will happen? It'll,
You missed the semicolon.
sorry. Yes. Yeah. If I put 0, it would say it is 0. So I hope you got the basic gist of what if statement is. I will give you one question for all of you to solve right now. Can all of you check if a given number is even? Check if the given number is even. So one of you could maybe unmute and tell me what I'll have to do and I will type it down over here. You could first try it in your computers. And if you're ready, one of you could just unmute and tell me what, and I will just type what you're telling. So one thing that we can do is we can import scanner class. If you remember what Janvi said, you can ask the input from the user. So I'll do that. So import. Please do this in your laptops as well. And one of you could unmute and tell me what to do.
Yeah, you should input the scanner class.
Yeah, tell me what the scanner class is.
Yeah, Java dot util dot scanner. S should be capital. Yeah, yes. And you can declare any variable like int a, maybe. You can ask the user to enter the number.
How do I do that?
Yeah, system dot out dot println. Enter and yeah, and we have to create an object. So scanner input. Scanner. Yes, yeah, yes, also no problem. New scanner. A bracket open system in dot no system. You missed the e.
Yeah.
Then you can use the if else here. If
Okay.
a percentage 2 equal 0. Like if it is if we get
You
the
didn't
divisor,
initial.
it will be even number.
Yes. Okay. So I need to put system.out.println.
Yeah. Else you can print it's odd.
Okay. This we are just sticking to if right now. So
Yeah.
we
Okay.
won't go to the else statement. So do you think you'll get the output here?
You didn't initialize A.
Yes. So over here, I need to say A is equal to sc dot next int. I need to accept the value from the user, right? I did not, I just
Yeah.
put
I
a
just missed that.
system.out.println, but I did not accept the value from the user. Yes. Can one of you tell me a number?
4.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we can put an even number. So it says it is even. So I think you got the basic understanding of what an if statement is. So now coming to if else. So the same thing, but then we have an else statement over here. What does this else statement do? If the condition in the if statement does not satisfy, then we move to the else statement. So no matter what, it will run one statement, which should be the else statement. So now, as I said in if this condition is true, it comes here. So if the condition is false, it would go to the else part. Did you guys understand? Okay. So as you said, we could add on to this program itself. As I think Navyashri was the one who was saying this. I'm not very sure. But you could add on to her thing. She said you can put an else statement and say it is odd. So if it is not even, that means it is odd. So what I'll do is I'll say else and then I'll put a system.out.println statement and say it is odd. Then what I'll do over here is I will give um or I'll give an odd number, and so 5 is an odd number. So because it doesn't satisfy this equation, it comes to the else part, which says that my number is odd. So I could give you one question for if else part. So can one of you solve this and maybe put it? So the question can be, take two values from the user um, as the length and breadth and check if it is a square or not. So the question is, I'll type it down over here. And okay, take two values, that is the length and breadth from the user, and print if it is a rectangle or square. Is that fine? Did you understand the question? So you have to take two values from the user, and you know that for a square the sides are equal, whereas for a rectangle the sides are not equal, length into breadth, whereas for square length into breadth is technically the same. So length and breadth should be the same. So what you need to do is take two values, check if the length and breadth is same. If the length and breadth is same, it'll be a square, else it'll be a rectangle. So can one of you tell me how to do this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to enter length, and then I'm going to ask them to enter breadth. If anyone has an idea on how to do this, please let me know. I will not do it. Anyone can unmute.
Yeah. Can I?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, you can add another variable.
Okay.
Like no, you already added. I just said it. If a equal to b.
If
Yeah,
A
length
is
equal
equal,
to b.
then
If both are equal, then it is square.
else it is
Square.
rectangle. So I hope all of you understood this. I will do both. I'll give the length as 6 and breadth also as 6. It says it is a square. And when I give the length as 6 and the breadth is 7, it says it is a rectangle. So this is if else statement. Now, if else if ladder, um, so for the, I'll just say what the if else statement is. I'm not very sure. So I said that if this condition is not true, then it goes to the next one. So now if else if ladder, it is basically a chain of if else. For if else if ladder, it's basically the same as if else condition. But then for a few things, you might have extra conditions. You might not just have one condition. You might have 2 or 3 conditions. What do you do for that? For that, you use an if else if ladder. So if the first condition doesn't satisfy, it goes to the condition 2. If the second condition also doesn't satisfy, it goes to the next condition. Now, if all the 3 conditions doesn't satisfy, you will have an else block. It will just run the else block. So we can do one question for if else if ladder also. The question can be like, take an input of 3 people and determine who's older and who's younger among them. So what I'll do is I will enter age 1. I'll put this as A, and then enter age 2. I'll put this as B, and then I'll do another one saying enter age 3, and I'll put this as C. So does anyone have any idea? So what we're going to do over here is basically compare all these 3 ages. So do you have any idea on how to do that? Using the operators that I said. So, okay, I will tell you what it is. So what we're going to do over here is we're first going to check if A is the youngest. Okay. So if A is the youngest, what I'm going to do is I'm checking if A is less than B and. What is double and? Double and means both this condition and this condition should be true. Only if both of those are true, it will enter. If either one of this is false, it will not enter. So over here, only if A is less than B and A is less than C, it will enter. So I can say that A is the youngest. And then I'll put else if. What can I put in this else if? I can check if B. So if B is less than A and B is less than C, I'll say B is the youngest. I will put another else if statement where I check if C is the youngest. So C less than A and C less than B. If that is true, I will say C is the youngest. So what have we done till now? We have checked for the youngest, right? Now we need to check for the oldest. So I will do the same thing again, but I'll just change this operator. I'll make it greater than. So I will do the same thing again. I will just copy all of this. Please make sure that you're doing it with me so that you will also know how to do all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change these operators. And then again over here, I will change this operator. I am going to check if B is greater than A as well as B is greater than C. If C is greater than A as well as C is greater than B, then C is the oldest. And what I'll do is I'll just put an else statement saying invalid input. Or like you can put any other thing as you anything else that you want. So like if I give everyone as the same age and stuff, you can also put like everyone's of the same age or anything like that over here. So what I've done over here is I have taken the scanner class and then asked the user to enter 3 ages. And what I've done is I have checked each age with the other one. So I checked A with B, A with C, B with C, B with A, and all of that. I've just checked all the possible combinations. And I've checked which is older, which is younger, and all of that. And this and thing basically tells us that both the left hand side and the right hand side should be true. If you want either one to be true, you can use the OR operator. So this OR operator basically says either this can be true or this can be true. So if either one is true, it would enter the loop. But then I want to check which one is the youngest. So both has to be true for me to check if A is the youngest. So what I'll do is I will run this and I will give the value age 1 as 12, age 2 as 34 and age 3 as 23. So now we know that 12 is the youngest and 34 is the oldest. So A is the youngest and B is the oldest. I hope all of you understood this. If you didn't understand, we could do another question, but if you did, we can move on. So if you did understand, please put a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, please ask me. Yes. Okay, cool. Okay, moving on. So we finished if simple if else statement, and if else if ladder. Now moving on to the for loop. So in for loop, we basically have to remember three parts. So we have the initialization, condition, and increment. So what is initialization basically? I just now told you what initialization was. Initialization is basically giving a value to a variable. Condition is what we put over here. And increment or decrement is basically the unary operator that I said. So plus plus or minus minus. So for loop is so loops in programming is basically like a few times we might have to execute a code repeatedly. So instead of us typing so many statements, we would just use a loop. And for loop, it enables us to initialize the loop variable, check the condition, and increment and decrement in a single line of code. So instead of us doing all of this separately, for loop lets us do it in one single line of code. And but this is possible only when we know the exact number of times we want our loop to run. So you know what initialization is, you know what condition is, you know what the increment decrement is. So let us do one program. You can open your online compilers and you have the basic stuff written. And what I'll do is I want to print a number 5 times. So for int I equals 0, make sure that you separate each of these with a semicolon. Okay, so the initialization, the condition, and the increment or decrement should be separated with a semicolon. So for int equals 0, I said I want to print first 5 numbers. So what I'll do is I less than 6, or I can put I less than equal to 5. Either of these would be the same. So I less than or equal to 5 will basically go up from 0 to 5. Similarly, I less than 6 will also go up to 0 to 5. And I'll say I plus plus. And then I'll put a system.out.println. And I will print I. So what do you think my output would be? Can anyone answer?
0, 1, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, it prints my numbers from 1 to 5. And it prints it one below the other because system.out.println. ln is basically, it goes to the next line. If you want it in the same line, you can just put system.out.print. So for loop basically makes our lives easier by putting everything in one single line. Otherwise, you would have to print everything separately. System.out.println 1, system.out.println 2, system.out.println 3. So this is basically what for loop is. Don't worry, we will be giving you more questions on each, so you could do that later on. So one more thing that you could do is print your name 5 times, or print something else. You can print patterns and all of that with for loops as well. So now we will move on to the next thing, which is basically the while loop. Now, while loop is basically called as an entry control loop, because the condition of this while loop is going to be checked in the start of your loop. So you have while and do while. Do while is called exit control, whereas while is called entry control. I'll tell you why. So over here, as I said, it's called entry control because it checks the condition in the start of the loop. Now, if the condition is true, then the body of this loop will be executed. Otherwise, the statement after this while loop will be executed. But then for do while loop, no matter what, the statements inside the do while loop will be executed at least once because the condition is checked after the statements are executed. That's why it is called an exit control loop. So while and do while is basically used when the number of iterations is not known. So the difference between while and do while is while the loop will not be executed unless and until the condition is true. Do while the loop will at least be executed once. Now we can do one example in each of these. So for while, we can do an example which just a minute. Okay, we can print our name 5 times. Okay, so I'll print my name 5 times in a while loop. So the syntax for a while loop is basically while condition, and then brackets, and inside the brackets you have your statement. So what I'll do is, I said I want to print my name 5 times. So what I'll do, I is less than equal to 5. But what do I need to do before that? I need to initialize I. So int I is equal to 1. So over here, I'll put system.out.println and I'll type my name. So when I run this, you'll see that my name is printed 5 times. Sorry, I forgot to increment I++. So that was an infinite loop, by the way. So because I did not increment I++, I was always 1 and it kept printing sadhana because I did not increment. So now over here I've incremented by. So in the first iteration I is 1, it prints this sadhana, the first one, and then I becomes 2. 2 is still less than 5, so it prints another sadhana. Then it becomes 3. 3 is still less than 5, it prints this. It becomes 4. 4 is still less than 5, it prints this. Then it becomes 5. 5 is equal to 5, so it prints this. Now it becomes 6. 6 is not less than 5 or equal to 5, so it exits. So now the same thing, if I put a larger number, it wouldn't execute. Nothing came. Why? Because it checks the condition. So the condition has to be equal to true for the while loop to work. Now the same thing if I do in do while, I will put the while condition here. I'll put the while condition here and then I'll put do here. Now what do you think would happen? It would execute it once. What did I put? Sorry, there should be a semicolon after while. So it would execute it once. So you know that 9 is actually not less than or equal to 5. So initially, while we did it in the while loop, it did not execute. But then do while loop, it did execute it once, and after that, it checked that 9 or 10 is not less than 5. That's why it stopped printing. So this is basically the main difference in while and do while. Make sure you put the semicolon after while. So for normal while, you do not need a semicolon. But then for do while, you need a semicolon. Okay, then we can move on with switch case. Rakshit, over to you.
I'm going to start with switch cases. So basically, let me define what switch case is, right? The Java switch statement executes one statement from multiple conditions. So until now, from Sadhana, we have learned what's the use of if statement. We have also learned the use of multiple if-else ladder statements. But when you think about it, when you take a problem which is much more complex, you just can't keep writing if else ladders so many times, right? Let us assume you have to write for a condition. Suppose if you want to find out which month of the year it is, of course you can use a switch statement and start from January and go till December. If month double equal to January, then print, say the month is January. Else if month double equal to February, then you have again a system.out.println the month is February, and so on. You have to keep writing the same if else ladder 12 times. And in many cases, writing the same thing 12 times might not be that efficient as such. And in places where you find a problem statement where you don't want to write the same if else ladder again and again, and you want to represent the same thing slightly more efficiently, what we would do is we would use a switch case. So it is like a if else if ladder statement. That's what the first point says. And moving to the second point says switch cases works with byte, short, int, long, enum types and wrapper styles, right? So the other advantage of switch case, as you can see in point 2, is it works with so many things like byte, short, int, long. And the third point is a switch statement can have an optional default case. Okay, so we'll be learning what default case also is hands on. But basically a default case is when the user types in something that is not covered in all these cases, right? Like by mistake he doesn't type a month, he types some other word which does not belong to January or February or March or April and so on until December. If he does not type something that is belonging to all these months, it goes into a default case where something has to print. You need to have a default case in switch case because you know if there is a condition, there might be many conditions in programming where you'd come across things like when a particular condition does not satisfy or all these switch cases does not satisfy, you should also have something in order to print. You should have something to print, and default case that does that job exactly, and it must appear at the end of the switch. So the default case can be used for performing a task when none of the cases is true. So until now we have been discussing that only. If you enter a word which does not belong to any one of the months of the year, it has to go to default case. Not only when you consider months of a year, if you consider any use case, if that particular input that the user gives is not present in is not covered in the switch case statements, it has to execute the default case statement, default state, and it has to execute the block that is present inside default case. And moving on, so now we'll understand how switch cases actually work, and then we'll go to hands-on. So switch cases work like this, right? You have 4 important steps. The switch case expression is evaluated once, right? When the user gives the input, let us just assume that user gave some input and then it goes through the switch cases once. The second point is the value of the expression is compared with the values in each case. And third is if there is a match, the associated block of code is executed. So second and third point is I think fairly easy to understand. They're just saying that if the user gives an input, it's going to basically go through all the cases that are present in the switch case statement. And once it goes through all the statements that are present in the switch case statement, it is going to compare the values of each case, right? And once that comparison becomes true, let us just assume in one of the switch case statements, the comparison is true. What happens is the block that is present under that case gets executed. That's what the third point says. And let us assume that the input that is given by the user is not matching with any of the cases of the switch case statement. What happens is it goes to the default block, and once it goes to the default block, the code that is present inside the default block gets executed. So this is how basically switch cases work and the idea and the logic behind switch case. Break and default keywords are optional. So at times there would be a requirement of not using the break statement, and at times there would be a requirement of using the break statement. So I just like to add a few more points to this. I would like to explain break statement in a little bit more detail. So in Java, when you reach a break statement or break keyword, what happens is it breaks out of the switch block. Okay, and we'll still be looking at all of this hands-on in some time. But I just wanted to elaborate more on the break statement. So the other point I would like to add here is this will stop the execution of more code and case testing inside the block. Once it encounters a break statement, and when does it encounter a break statement? Once, let us assume that the user has input something, right? It has found the case in which it has to execute, and once it goes into the case which it has to execute, it finishes that and it hits the break statement, which means that the execution would stop right now and it would come out of the case. That's what break statement does. And default, as we have already discussed in the previous slide, default keyword is just a keyword which once when the user gives an input and it does not match with any of the case of the switch case statements, it goes and executes the block that is present inside the default block. So this is all I had to add about switch case. Moving on. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of what I just talked about in the previous two slides. So this is the syntax of switch statement. So you have a switch and you put some kind of expression inside the switch. So basically, let us assume that the user has input something. Whatever the user has input, that would go and sit in this expression part, right? And now what would happen is it would go through each of the cases, case X and case Y. And below case X, there is a certain block of code that needs to be executed. And below case Y, there again is another block of code that needs to be executed. And here there is break statements also that I've included under case X and under case Y. So let us assume that the user has given some kind of expression where he wants to find out, what is greater in X and Y. Or just let us assume that if the user hits X alphabet on the keyboard, the control goes to case X, and whatever code block is present under case X, that gets executed. And since break is also present in the next line, what happens is that the control comes out of this entire block. That's what would happen. So there is a diagrammatic representation also of the same on the right hand side of the slide. So it starts. So the execution of the program starts, and then there is a constant expression that needs to be evaluated. Once the constant expression is true, that is, let us assume that case X is true or case 1 is true, what happens is that it goes and executes the code block 1. So whatever is present under case 1, the block of code that is present under case 1 is executed. And then because of break, it finishes or it ends, right? Now let us assume that case 1 is false. What happens is it goes to case 2. And now again it compares whether the constant expression is similar to case 2 or is equal to case 2. So what it basically does is whatever the user tries to input, now it compares, it comes to case y or it comes to case 2 and compares whether the user has pressed, you know, y alphabet in the keyboard or case 2 in the keyboard. If that is the case, what happens is it goes to code block 2 and it executes the code block 2. Once it executes the code block 2, because there is break statement, it ends, right? And then it goes to case 3. Similarly, if the case 3, whatever is written in case 3 is true, it executes code block 3. And this is what I had been talking to you about in the last 2 slides. So let us assume that there is suppose let us just assume that there is a case where case 1 did not satisfy, case 2 did not satisfy, and case 3 did not satisfy, which means that when it goes to case 1, the evaluation leads to false. Once it comes to case 2, let us assume again it evaluates to false, and let us assume when it comes to case 3, again it evaluates to false, which means that none of the cases are satisfying. It goes and executes the default code or the code that is present under the default keyword, the block of code that is present under default, that gets executed, and then the program ends. Now we'll be looking at hands-on on how this switch case is actually working. So as you can see my screen here, we have a public class main. We have already studied what's public class main. We have also studied static void main, string args also. Now let us assume that I'm making a program where I'm trying to calculate which day of the week it is, right? If it is case 1, it has to be Monday. If the day is 2, it has to be Tuesday. If it is 3, it has to be Wednesday, so on, right? So let us just finish this piece of code. So I'd be writing the same thing. So this is the case 3. Here I'd be writing my case 4, where I'm saying the compiler that if the number is 4, what it has to do is it has to print Thursday, and so on. So now basically what happens is, here what I've given, I have basically made a variable called day and I've initialized that to 4. What happens is that constant value is going to the switch here, and once day is here, so what it does is it compares with each and every case that is present over here, right? So if it is case 1, if it was 1, it would just check the equality, whether it is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or none of them. Suppose if it was 1, it would have printed Monday. If it was 2, it would have printed Tuesday. If it was 3, it would have printed Wednesday. And if it was 4, it could have printed Thursday. Let's just run this and see what we get. So exactly as we expected, it has printed Thursday, which means that when you try to understand what exactly happened in this piece of code, we would see that it has compared with case 1, it has also compared with case 2, it has also compared with case 3, and it also had compared with case 4, right? We would look at everything that we have learned in the previous slide using this program itself. Now it has compared it with case 1. Since it was not case 1, it had gone to case 2. Since it was not case 2, it had gone to case 3, and then it compared again and came back to the last case, that was case 4. And since the value was matching here, it had printed Thursday as we all expected it to print until now. So now let us assume that let us see the default case in action, right? So when would it go to default case if it is not 1, if it is not 2, if it is not 3, and if it is not 4? When all the case are false, according to the diagram, when you compare it, since it is not belonging to any of the cases here, it is going into the default block, right? And once it goes to the default block, it has to print nothing to display, right? So let us just see that in action. So I'm not going to give 1, 2, 3, or 4 here. I'm going to give, say, 5. And let us see what's going to happen. And let us just look at the output. So according to whatever we have learned until now, it should not go to any of the case, because case 1 would evaluate to false, case 2 would evaluate to false, case 3 also would evaluate to false, and so would case 4. Right now, when we run the program, what happens is, as we expected, it shows nothing to display here. And why does it show nothing to display? It shows nothing to display because all the above cases above default were evaluated to false. Since everything was evaluated to false, as I mentioned, there should be some block or a condition that you want to put, which basically, if everything is false, it has to basically, it should not show no output, right? You have to have some kind of output. So if all the things are false, it has to show something, and you never know what the user would give the program, right? He can give any one of the cases that actually satisfy the condition, or he can also give some kind of case that does not satisfy any of the case conditions. So when you're writing software, or when bigger programs are written, you take care of all the kind of cases that are possible and only then write. So in case of failure, what happens is, basically you have to write some kind of code when writing bigger programs, in order to basically handle unexpected inputs also. So just as we learned from this hands-on code, what we understood is it's going to the default case where it shows nothing to display. And now let us understand another very interesting point, and let us understand what is the use of break here, right? So generally, when you run default, it is a better practice to even write break here, so that it's just uniform enough. Now let me just change the day to 3. So what should it print? As we know, as we have studied till now, it has to print Wednesday, right? And we exactly get that output also. But now let us do one thing, and let us just erase this break statement from here, and now study what would happen to the code, right? Let us just execute it and see what kind of output are we getting when we basically erase off that break statement from here. So this is some interesting insight. We have an interesting result in our console, and it's printing Wednesday and Thursday, when basically it has to only print Wednesday when case is equal to 3, right? And if you see, why is it printing that? It's because since there was no break here statement here involved, it has just surpassed case 3 and also gone to case 4. So I hope you have understood all about switch statements. And now I'm going to talk about methods. So just to give you an idea of what a method is, a method, again, to call a method in Java, write the method name followed by parenthesis and a semicolon, right? So a method is nothing but something that performs one particular set of instructions. So a method can be defined as a collection of statements that perform a specific task, right? And you just want to keep your code, organized, and it would result in returning the result to the caller. So a method can perform some specific task without returning anything also. And then a few other points that I would like to add about methods is methods allows us to reuse the code without retyping the code. So in many instances you would find out that you don't want to keep you want to keep reusing a particular set of statements, and you don't want to keep on you know keep writing the same statements again and again, and increase the code base, increase the length of the code base. So you would want to put all the statements in a method or a function, and then you wanted to basically run the code. And method is a collection of statements that perform a specific task and returns the result to the caller. So just as we have discussed right now, it's just basically reusing one piece of activities, some daily activities that we all do, like you know uh, taking care of our fitness, eating, etc., etc. If we try to put them in a function, you don't have to keep writing, or you don't have to keep doing the same thing again and again, right? So once you have that in a method, you don't need to you can just reuse this method wherever you want in the program. So now I'll talk about components of a method, and I'll just um, I'll just probably brief you about each of these. So a modifier is nothing but the access type of a method, right? Modifier can defines the access types of a method. So access types can be public, protected, private, and default. Public is when it is accessible in all classes in your application. Protected is accessible within the class in which it is defined and its subclasses. Private is only accessible within the class it is defined. And default is accessible within the same class and package, and also within the same class it is defined. So these are access modifiers basically. And then return type is the data type of the value returned by the method is basically there in the return type. We'll be looking at all these things hands on also. And method name is the rules for field names apply to method names as well. So we did understand about how you would name rules for naming these name fields, so you can do the same thing there also. Parameter list. So parameter list is comma separated list of input parameters are defined, preceded with their data type, enclosed within parentheses, right? And we have exception list. Exception list is the exceptions you expect by the method, you can that can throw, and you can also specify exceptions. So that is something you need to know about exception list. And method body is nothing but whatever the code you are writing which is present inside the braces and under the method. So you want a particular set of statements that you want to execute in a method, and that is what it is about. So this is the components of methods. So we'll be looking at hands-on right now. Okay, so we have a method here called max, right? And we are calling this max method with two arguments, 4 and 5. So let's just see what it does. It's a very simple method which basically compares the two numbers that I'm giving to this method, and it tells me which one of them is greater, right? Among 4 and 5, it just tells me which is greater, right? So we have studied all these components of a function right now, and now let us just define all these components of a function. So the body is nothing but whatever is present inside this function. When we had studied about body and what is the body of a method, the body here is whatever is coming inside the function, that is the body. And the return type is void, which means that it is not going to return anything. Here I'm just printing out system.out.println second number is greater. And int x comma int y is the parameter list that we just now discussed about. Here there are two parameters. This function is accepting two parameters, int x and int y. You could also code with me parallelly, and you can just understand after typing this code on your computer, you can just understand all the components here. And the return type here is void, and max is the name of the function or the method name here. So this is what I had to talk about functions. And this is the example. So I'd just like to finish my point saying that here in the main method, you're calling this function called max, and what happens is the control goes and it searches for the function max. So once it searches for the function max, the parameters here 4 and 5 that we can see are basically mapped with the parameters that we are defining in the function, that is int x and int y. Now x and y would get the values of 4 and 5, and now we have as Sadhana had mentioned about if and else ladder. It basically compares among 4 and 5, whichever is the greater number among 4 and 5, it goes and executes that block of statement. If it is under if, it basically if it comes under if, it basically executes that block of statement that is coming under if. Else it would execute the statements that are coming under else. This is the last point that I would like to add on about functions. Over to you.
Okay, we come to the end of this session. I will be putting up a document right now of a few questions that we compiled for all of you. So it has questions from each topic that we've taken today. I've also put up links of our social media handles, so please do follow that. And all the recordings of our of any of the GDSE sessions are will be posted on our YouTube page, which is also put up. So don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for attending.